Part 7. Restarting the Myth. Author, Feng Chao Huang. Chapter 61. Wayne felt that he was in trouble. He didn't know who the Death Knight was, but the titles in Yulia's newspaper were longer and longer, and he was obviously a big shot. Big shots are often petty and have a strong possessiveness. He stole the other party's equipment and horse. Wayne was not a big shot, so he couldn't guess the other party's mind, but he judged others by himself. If someone rode his beloved mare and whipped the horse, waving his sword while riding, and came to his door and shamelessly asked for help to practice skills, it's definitely going to be a dead end. Moreover, the night of the goddess of death. Wayne clearly remembered that his contact with the magic world was inseparable from the followers of the goddess of death. Because of the mark left by the other party, 3 magic girls came to his door in the middle of the night. He finally got rid of the curse, cleaned himself up and mixed into the legitimate church. How did he get involved with the goddess of death again? What is this, looking for death, or suicide? Wayne wanted to dismount, but Yulia refused. She was not just any undead warhorse. He drew his sword and climbed on her back. Wayne was destined to be her master. I'm afraid the Death Knight will come and misunderstand us. It's okay. He has no brains. No matter how brainless he is, he still has brains. No, he really has no brains. He lost his head. Wayne was silent. He lost his sword, his horse, and even his head. The Death Knight was in such a mess. He imagined the current situation of the Death Knight. Under the moonlight, the headless skeleton was groping forward with a guide stick. The cold wind blew through his lonely heart, silently calling for his mount. It was as sad as it was funny. No wonder the Death Knight didn't find Yulia for so long. He was so careless that he even lost his head. It would be a miracle if he could find a horse. Wayne pouted. To be fair, he didn't want to give up the power he had obtained. Especially when wearing the vest of the Death Knight, when doing bad things at night, no, when doing chivalrous deeds at night, you can perfectly hide your identity, and you can achieve more than disadvantages with one stone. The temptation is too great, Wayne can't let it go, so he decided to take it one step at a time and ride first. Yulia, you just mentioned the underground tomb, can you tell me more about this part? Wayne has heard a lot of urban legends about underground tombs. The most famous underground tomb is located in Franc, Paris, which was transformed from an abandoned quarry. It is said that millions of people are buried there, and the bones are piled up into a mountain. When a pickaxe is dug, bones gurgle out. There is also a legend of underground tombs in London, which has only become popular in recent years. It originated from the night subway. According to witnesses, the subway was running as usual, and suddenly it drove into a tunnel with a mountain of bones. The London subway has always been a disaster area for urban legends, with all kinds of things, such as a late-night subway that goes directly to hell, transporting the souls of the dead, and there is no return. It's very weird. Wayne didn't understand. He rode his undead horse and walked his evil dog around the cemetery again and again. 3 skeletons gathered together, just like patrolling the territory. Why did the Death Knight's warhorse appear in London? The underground tomb is located in Paris. His warhorse will never appear here. There is only one truth. The Death Knight is in London. Bang! Sci-fi slapped the table and glanced at the 3 priests at the conference table. First, the Dark Knight rose, and then the Death Knight extended his claws to London. I am deeply ashamed of your incompetence. Now, who can give me a reasonable explanation? X3. The 3 priests, 2 men and 1 woman, all looked middle-aged people in their 30s to 40s. They were silent when they heard the words. The Church of Nature has been deeply rooted in the Kingdom of Windsor for many years. Because of its geographical location across the sea, it has always attached great importance to the Windsor division. The Church of Nature established a sub-district headquarters in London, stationed at the highest power center, with a high priest in charge of the overall situation and 4 priests assisting. Rightward arrow. For hundreds of years, there was peace and tranquility until the Dark Knight appeared in London. The Knights of the Dark Goddess walking in the world were powerful and repeatedly wiped out the strongholds of the Church of Nature. The Church of Nature organized several roundups and invited priests from the Sun and Moonlight churches during the period. As a result, they were outnumbered and looked very embarrassed. In the most recent roundup, the Church of Nature dispatched all the elites in Windsor, and everyone gathered in London, vowing to avenge the previous shame. Hundreds of magicians failed to beat a Dark Knight, and the supreme leader, the High Priest, was beaten half to death on the spot and almost lost his life on the battlefield. The incompetent High Priest was transferred back to the headquarters for recuperation. The darkness eroded his thinking consciousness, and he lost most of his life. It is still unclear whether he can be cured. The power of the Windsor division is firmly controlled by 4 priests. The airborne Sci-fi cannot issue orders, and the government orders cannot leave the office of the High Priest, and has become a mascot with long breasts and legs. The turning point is the Earth Center Church in Enroeld Town. To be precise, the turning point is the legendary wizard Marshall, who calls himself the Lord of the Void. Marshall is a legendary wizard of the Windsor division of the Church of Nature. He has made great achievements in war and is well known. Because of his outstanding achievements, contributions to the Kingdom of Windsor, and unparalleled influence, he was canonized as a noble by the royal family. It can be said that Marshall made an indispensable contribution to the completion of the Windsor Division's London headquarters. Because of this, the Windsor Division has gathered a large number of Marshall's disciples. Marshall has a disciple named Sidney, who is one of the 4 priests in the Windsor district and is also famous. If the teacher had not gone crazy and betrayed his faith, and the stain was too big to wash away, Sidney could have been promoted to high priest. According to the above meaning, although Sidney's teacher was crazy and openly betrayed the goddess, causing an uproar, Sidney was a devout disciple of nature. The church recognized his faith and allowed him to continue to serve as a priest. Sidney is not a child. He knows that such words are enough to listen to. His inability to become a high priest does not affect his exercise of the power of the high priest. Joining hands with 3 colleagues, holding on to power, and pretending to obey the new high priest Sci-fi. Seeing that Sci-fi had no way to deal with it, Sidney secretly thought that this was a sure thing. Not happy for 2 days, he was cheated by the teacher again. The geocentric sacrifice incident broke out in Enroerd Town. Sidney was accused of being involved in the cult and was suspended and went home to stare at the owl. Whether there is any specific involvement and whether Sidney provided protection for the Earth Center Church is still under investigation. It is inconvenient to disclose the matter because it is a big deal. But Sidney's corruption, bribery, and keeping a mistress have been thoroughly investigated, and the evidence is irrefutable. In the power field, the truth is often not important. What is important is that Sidney stepped down. He took the opportunity to regain some power, and received a congratulatory message and commendation from the headquarters for crushing the evil ambitions of the Earth Center Church, saving the townspeople and preserving the reputation of the church. On that day, he took advantage of the situation to suppress the 3 priests and regain some power again. She is a very capable woman. She cuts the Gordian knot quickly and uses the simplest and crudest personnel transfer to support a group of frustrated marginalized people in various executive departments, which makes the 3 priests breathless. They can only fight together. Failure is a matter of time. The day Sidney lost power was doomed. The 3 of them either surrendered or were thoroughly investigated for their moral corruption. For example, today, Sci-fi summoned 3 priests and asked them to explain their incompetence. The Dark Knight is undoubtedly powerful. If they can't beat him, they can't beat him. The 3 priests can put the blame on the previous high priest. It's not that they are not good enough, but that the high priest's strategy is wrong. But the Death Knight can't be blamed. What else can he do if he can't supervise well? Is he just eating? The Church of Nature doesn't keep useless people. If it doesn't work, it will replace them with a group of people who can both eat and do things. I'll give you 10 days to find the Death Knight's warhorse and the Shadow Nightmare. Sci-fi glanced at the three people and threw 3 thick file bags on the table with a snap. After 10 days, if you don't bring back the warhorse and the sword, I will contact the headquarters and handle everything impartially. The 3 people were cold in their hearts. It hasn't been long since the vicious woman found evidence to frame them. What's wrong with being greedy? After so many years of life and death for the church, isn't it okay to earn some hard-earned money to improve your life? Restarting the myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 62. The 3 priests left the meeting room with dark faces. Sci-fi issued an ultimatum: find the Death Knight's horse and sword within 10 days, and continue to be a priest if he can find it. You can't find it even if you look for it. The Death Knight's horse comes and goes without a trace. Legend has it that it was a magical life created by the goddess of death herself in order to reward the Death Knight. The warhorse has its own space magic, and no one can find it unless it shows up. Even if they were lucky enough to encounter it, they couldn't keep this warhorse. The 3 priests are all silver mages who have risen to the top through qualifications. They are politicians from the mixed church. They are good at management but not good at fighting. Their strength is far inferior to that of Sci-fi and not as good as the high priest candidate Sydney. In the entire Windsor Natural Church, the only one who can compete with He is Sydney. Even Sydney did not dare to say that he could keep the undead warhorse. The Death Knight and the warhorse are a whole. When the undead warhorse comes to London, the Death Knight must be nearby. The entire Natural Church elite in Windsor had never fought against the Dark Knight, let alone the Death Knight who had become famous earlier. Following the lessons learned from the previous high priest who was half dead, Sydney did not have the guts to challenge the Death Knight alone, so he went crazy to find that horse. Trouble. The 3 priests could not bring back the undead warhorse, let alone the sword of the Death Knight. The Shadow Nightmare was so vicious that it carried a death curse. Any living person who touched it would be corroded and corrupted by the power of death. The body collapsed, the mind was still, and even the soul could not be saved. Everything was swallowed up by the Shadow Nightmare, and was sent to the kingdom of death to be frozen forever. The Shadow Nightmare is an evil artifact that cannot be touched. It is too terrifying and should not exist in the chosen continent. So, on the surface, he gave them 10 days, but in fact, he directly pronounced their fate. They would go home, pack their bags, and get out after 10 days. Don't leave, just follow the process. Damn bastard, who does she think she is? She is a scalpel dedicated to fighting. She got lucky and climbed to the position of priest. The superiors transferred her to London and appointed her as the new high priest to let her assist us. It's to appease Sydney, not to let her fight for power, Lawrence said coldly. It's ridiculous to say that we are corrupt and bribery, as if she has never been corrupt. Dana gritted his teeth, he hated double standards the most. Priestess Simon said weakly, I heard that her family is very rich. Her husband is just rich. Does Austin Landau know? The one who owns a bank. Lawrence dismissed it, Austin's reputation is well known. As a playboy, there is no shortage of women around him. The 2 of them are definitely not together because of love. One is lustful and the other is greedy for money. That's it? Dana said sourly, she really doesn't need to make money. If she wants money, she can just spread her legs. It's still legal. Priestess Simon didn't answer. The 2 colleagues' comments about Sci-fi were full of derogation and disdain, which made her, who is also a woman, deeply uncomfortable. She then asked, what should we do now? Order the entire city to search for undead war horses. So what if I find it? X3. There was really nothing he could do after finding it. Simon sighed and said, "The high priest did this just to make us submissive." Sidney was implicated by his teacher. Although he lost his power, he still has a large number of supporters in Windsor. Many people, they are all watching in secret, and the high priest needs our support. What, you want to be her dog? Lawrence mocked. After a few months, you should be able to tell what kind of person she is. It's not free to be her as a dog. Many people want to be dogs but can't find the way. Simon sighed, bid farewell to the two of them, and went alone to issue the order to find the undead horse. The two colleagues have been in office for many years and have enjoyed too much happiness brought by power. They have become bloated and have forgotten the declaration they made when they joined the church and the purpose of pursuing power in the first place. Dana watched Simon leave coldly. Simon has already given in. He also called the woman the high priest. As far as I know, the woman asked her to have dinner. It's normal. Among the four priests, she has the least power. Now that there is a vacancy in power, she will naturally try her best to beg for mercy from the new master. Lawrence sneered, pathetic guy, sitting in the office is so stupid that he actually thinks that the enemy. I will let her go, she is nothing without us. What should we do? Dana frowned. Lawrence was speechless and silent. It was impossible to be subdued. When he first saw Sci-fi, he felt that this woman was particularly annoying. When he thought that she had become his superior, he felt an indescribable disgust all over his body. Dana, too, hates he very much. It has nothing to do with personal grudges, it is purely the possessive desire for power. If any high priest with strong tactics is parachuted in, they will both be conflicted. The two of them strolled through the garden pavilion without saying a word, each with their own thoughts. After a moment, the two stopped at the same time, looked at each other and nodded. Find Sidney and let him deal with he. When it comes to dissatisfaction, where are they? The person most dissatisfied with he in London is Sidney. In terms of strength, achievements, status, and reputation, Sidney is the real successor to the high priest. He was tricked by his teacher and was unable to take power directly. And the person who annihilated the Geocenter cult and ousted him from power was also Ziffy. Adding up several grievances, Sidney may have been preparing something. Would you like to find out some information? It's just a cup of afternoon tea, what does it matter? Tell me, is there any connection between Sidney and the Earth Center cult? Has he been suppressing information? Probably not. When the legendary mage was still there, Sidney was the most loyal student. The legendary mage became the Lord of the Void. He hated his teacher more than anyone else. It was too late to hide. It is impossible to have anything to do with the Earth Center cult. Involve. That's right, unless he's crazy. Ha ha ha. X2. X2. Do you think it's possible that Sidney is crazy? Don't be suspicious. Sidney is one of the attending physicians at Hongi Ellen Lunatic Asylum. If he was crazy, he would have been locked up long ago. That's right. Let's go find him for afternoon tea. London, West End. The black car drove away from the villa, and the two priests left disappointed. Sidney only talked about black tea throughout the whole process. He was not dissatisfied with the new high priest Hefei and was happy to enjoy his retirement life. He also advised them to listen to the high priest's words and stop having messy thoughts. Everyone is a believer, so the struggle for power can be put aside, and serving the goddess is the top priority. Lawrence and Dana didn't believe it. If you, old boy, could just look away, you would have delegated power 3 months ago. Why wait until now to make sense? Nothing gained from this trip, and the two priests decided to come back for afternoon tea tomorrow. According to the rules, Sidney should change his words after 3 times, today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow. The camera returns to the mansion surrounded by trees. The 3-story mansion was originally off-white. Most of the coating peeled off, exposing the internal masonry structure. Traces of erosion over time can be seen everywhere on the building, like a decadent oil painting. If you look closely, you will find that the peeling coating has formed several irregular patterns, and a six-pointed star, a cross star, and a three-pointed star are respectively outlined on the wall except the main entrance. The three-story mansion is Sidney's ancestral home, which he transformed into an impregnable magical fortress. Sidney stood on the balcony, his eyes skipping through the trees, looking at the leaving black car, and shook his head. Idiot, why should I take action against that woman? She is eager to make great achievements, and sooner or later she will meet the dark night. Sidney is wearing a tall suit. He is about 40 to 50 years old. He has a strong physique, broad shoulders and arms, and a powerful back. He has a meticulous beard, and his temples are gray. The beard and the back of his hair are mixed with a lot of gray, and his eyes are particularly bright. Having been in power for a long time, the five senses are not angry and self-defeating, and they have a heavy sense of oppression from those in power. In the same frame as the three priests Lawrence, Dana, and Simon, he must be in the C position. He can't stand otherwise. The temperament of the younger brother of the three colleagues is too scene-stealing. This is indeed the case. Sidney had a very good relationship with the previous high priest, so good that they almost wore a pair of trousers. The three priests were able to climb all the way up. Sidney provided more or less some advice. Without him, the reason is to take over the power and let the newcomers know who is the boss. Everything is ready, I have the advantage, all I need is the newcomer to be subdued. I never expected that the teacher was so deceitful that he caused such a big stir without telling the whole Earth Center sect. The most important thing is that it failed and left a mountain of ironclad evidence. The world is so big, why do you insist on holding on to London? Wouldn't it be better to go somewhere else? Sidney was very depressed. He tried his best to put aside the relationship with his teacher, but it didn't work. Everyone knew that his teacher Marshall had betrayed the natural church and was a complete lunatic. He was a sinner who could not be cleansed. Therefore, when Sci-fi presented evidence that the geocentric cult believed in the Lord of the Void, he had no choice but to obey any arrangements from his superiors, otherwise he would also be labeled a traitor. Regarding the new high priest Hephai, Sidney asked Paris's colleagues for information. He was a ruthless character, a descendant of God and the former scalpel organization with the strongest combat power. Sidney is a golden mage, and so is Ziffy, but her identity as a favored one makes Ziffy break away from the concept of a golden mage. When he was dismissed from his post and investigated, Sidney thought about it and realized that he was so angry that it hurt his health. There was nothing wrong with going home and staring at the owl. While he was worried, Sidney's expression suddenly changed. He asked the servant to clear the table and walked quickly into the study. He opened the secret door behind the bookcase and stepped into the eerily quiet dark void. After passing through a maze area, Sidney looked at the golden statue in front of him with an ugly expression. After a while, he said with difficulty, "Teacher, you said you would not contact me again." "Sidney, my dear disciple, this is the last time." "What's up? Find me someone." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Restarting the Myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 63. Who is it? Sidney spoke coldly, speaking quickly, just wanting to end this conversation immediately. Marshall, the Lord of the Void and the former legendary wizard, was once Sidney's pride. He was proud of having a teacher at the level of a legendary wizard. Later, those who understand all understand, and he wanted to go back and shoot himself. "Shit, stop laughing, this old man will kill you." Sidney wanted to distance himself from his teacher, but it was a pity that it was not up to him. Not to mention the binding of the master-disciple identity, the teacher's stain was his stain, and he could not withstand the relentless pursuit of political enemies. Just to say that everything he learned came from his teacher, and the latter could find him anytime and anywhere. Sidney was very puzzled. Other legendary wizards went crazy and only focused on plunging into the universe of the Star World, and never came out until their minds were completely crazy and dissipated. His teacher didn't do that. He left a mark of a statue, and would go home from time to visit and chat with his students. When the news first came out that the teacher had gone mad and betrayed the church, Sidney was skeptical, suspecting that this was a political persecution, and the people above started the internal struggle they were best at. The teacher just had a strange personality, but in essence he was still a magician with firm beliefs. It was not until Marshall's token was twisted into a golden statue, and he changed his name and called himself the Lord of the Void, that Sidney believed it. He tried to throw away the statue, but the statue would come back to him every time. When they met for the first time, Sidney made a decisive distinction that devout believers would never associate with traitors, and they would not contact each other in the future, for he was afraid that the goddess of nature would misunderstand. The Lord of the Void smiled and told Sidney an address where several boxes of magic books were buried, and detailed how to upgrade from a golden wizard to a legendary wizard. Sidney could not resist the temptation, and although he said he would not go, his body honestly arrived at the target address. He dug up the precious magic book, and when he could not throw away the golden statue, he hid it in the void fabricated by his mind. When they met for the second time, Sidney said the same thing: "Don't contact me anymore, I'm afraid the goddess will misunderstand." The Lord of the Void smiled back again, and this time he sent a few parchments, which recorded the knowledge behind the Gate of Truth, including the life magic that the Church of Nature has been studying. Sidney was silent for a long time, and shamefully called out "Teacher." The third time, the Lord of the Void began to make demands. Of course, he claimed to be an excellent mentor who loved his students and would not force them, and Sidney could refuse. Sidney wanted to refuse, but he knew that he could not afford the price of refusal. Once the news that he kept in touch with the traitor spread, the church would not let him go. At the least, a wanted order would be issued, and several sects would issue a reward together, attracting the disgusting bounty hunters of the Free Mage Alliance. At the worst, he would be directly escorted to the Red Leaf Forest Lunatic Asylum and enjoy a private room. Sidney knew the Red Leaf Forest Lunatic Asylum too well. That was a ghost place, and anyone with no problems would go crazy if they were locked up there. At first, the Lord of the Void's request was not excessive and not difficult. After repeated requests, the Lord of the Void asked him to secretly send the statue out of London. Sidney immediately strongly refused. It was impossible, there was no way. He lowered his head in the sneer of the Lord of the Void, silently took the statue and sent it out. He remembered very clearly that the delivery location was not in Windsor, but the damned geocentric church was established in Enroard Town, and it was also crazy to play large-scale sacrifices. That time, the Lord of the Void told Sidney that this was the last request from the teacher to the student, and he would never disturb him in the future. Sidney did not comment, considering that the statue had been sent away, it should be the last time. Today, the statues are reunited again. The old man is very bad, and he never tells the truth. Sidney regretted it very much. It would be better if he didn't go to dig the box at that time. His name is Wayne, that should be his name. He is an apprentice of a magician. He is very likely a Lendon. He lived in Enrold some time ago. The statue flashed with light. And put a big head photo in front of Sidney. Find him, but don't kill him. Bring him here. I want to see him. Sidney didn't ask why, but remembered the face in the photo firmly, and said in a low voice, "Marshall, this is the last time." "Of course, I swear." Sidney lowered his head in silence, feeling extremely sad. There are only 0 times and countless times of cheating, so how can there be a last time? No, I have to think of a way. If he doesn't get rid of the entanglement of the bastard, he will die. There are ways, such as the Red Leaf Forest Lunatic Asylum, but the operation is too complicated. If he is not careful, he will fall into it. Sidney had considered it before, but the risk was too great and he gave up. This time, the geocentric church incident made his scalp numb. Compared with being pitted to death by the Lord of the Void, the risk index of the Red Leaf Forest Lunatic Asylum immediately dropped. Anyway, the worst outcome is to go to the mental hospital. Why don't I take the initiative? Haha, my student, you seem to have troubles, the Lord of the Void laughed sinisterly. What are my troubles, don't you know? Sidney said coldly, there are some troubles. The Death Knight left Paris for some reason. He is now in London. Witnesses have seen his warhorse and sword. Impossible, the Lord of the Void asserted. Teacher, you seem to know something. Teacher, when there is something, Marshal when there is nothing, the moral bottom line is very flexible. Sidney raised his eyebrows. Although the old man is a bastard, he has to admit that he is really good at intelligence. The Death Knight's head was stolen. He is now helpless and has to obey others. He has abandoned death. The Lord of the Void said enthusiastically, the once invincible Death Knight is now just a prisoner at the mercy of others. His honor, his pride, and his freedom have all been taken away. My student, do you know how wonderful the world outside the God's chosen continent is? Sidney swallowed his saliva, deeply surprised by the Lord of the Void's words, and couldn't wait to say, where are you, what did you see? Ha ha ha, I saw the essence of the gods, my student, your faith is not worth mentioning, don't believe it anymore. Shut up. Sidney's face was livid, and he turned and walked away quickly. I will find that person for you, and I hope you can fulfill your promise. This is the last time, otherwise, I would rather die with you than let you control me again. He. The golden light of the statue converged, and murmured, the awakened are converging. Under his protection and guidance, the faith of the gods is vulnerable. My student, you'd better step into the legend quickly, a new era is coming. Da. In the misty cemetery, the sound of iron hooves was crisp and loud, breaking the silence and coldness, injecting a touch of fresh vitality. If you don't look at the face, it is indeed like this. It's not good to look at the face, the atmosphere is even colder. Wayne put on the skin of the Death Knight, rode the undead horse, walked the evil dog, waved the bone sword, and chased the skeleton rabbit in the grass. Once you learn to chase the rabbit, you will never go back. Regardless of whether the Death Knight's status has been lowered, Wayne has gained happiness, he is happy, and Yulia and Aubin are also happy. Swish. A white light flashed, and the skeleton rabbit was instantly torn into pieces. 3 seconds later, the skeleton was reassembled and continued to jump in the grass. Wayne was a little fed up, and turned his head to look at the graves with towering tombstones. If I remember correctly, burial is popular here, and the dead face their heads to the east, implying resurrection at sunrise. It is impossible for the sunrise to rise, but there is a bunch of hairy moons. Wayne raised the shadow nightmare and held it high above his head. A white light flashed and a cold breath of death surged. The ripples rushed past, and the cemetery was silent for a moment. The next second, one by one, the leaky figures responded to the call, pushed open the rotten coffins and crawled out from the ground. Kaka. Kala. The moon was dim, and the Death Knight rode on a warhorse, divided hundreds of skeleton soldiers into 2 camps, and led one to fight the other. Brothers, charge. AXN. Otherwise, will the blood flow into the city of London? Master, your riding skills are getting better and better, you are really a genius, Aubin praised. It can be seen that Yulia was riding very happily. It's okay, mainly because I keep a good figure and don't have much fat. Wayne shook his skull head and complained about himself. The Death Knight's vest was good in everything except desire. Yesterday he didn't understand, but today he figured it out. He has no hormones, only a big empty head. His smart IQ occupies the high ground, so naturally he has no worldly desires. After a fierce battle, Wayne chopped the last skeleton soldier to pieces with a sword. He was a little tired of it. It's better to share happiness with others than to enjoy it alone. He looked towards the direction outside the cemetery. Is it possible to parade the skeleton soldiers in the middle of the night and create a new urban legend with his own hands? Restarting the myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 64. Thinking of creating a new urban legend and becoming the hero of a horror story that can stop children from crying, Wayne couldn't hold back and was eager to have a skeleton parade. At this time, if someone had advised him, Wayne would have stopped. Unfortunately, he couldn't be persuaded because the butler was not there. There were only lickers around Wayne, and the two of them would only help the evil together. When they heard that Wayne was going to do something, they shook their heads and tails and immediately stopped being sleepy. Aubin suggested taking George Street. Number 10 George Street is the famous Prime Minister's office, located in the center of London. The parade there would definitely be a blockbuster and make the front page headlines tomorrow morning. Yulia thought Aubin was right. When he heard this, Wayne's mind immediately faded. He just wanted an urban legend, that kind of hazy and half-true and half-false feeling, and only crazy people would grab tomorrow's headlines. Ignorance is bliss. The world of magic is too dangerous, and ordinary people should not know and cannot know it. Otherwise, the strong sense of crisis will make people flee in a rush, and the whole city will collapse. Wayne thought about it and decided to go by water, and not bring the skeleton soldiers. Although the uncles and aunts don't have to go to work tomorrow morning, it's embarrassing to wake them up so late at night. There's no need to continue to torment their old bones for a momentary interest. Fellow villagers, don't stand up. Staying up late hurts your health. Go to bed early. We will continue to have fun tomorrow night. Wayne waved his hand, and Aubin led the way. The thick fog wrapped the warhorse, and Death walked with the fog, and came to the Thame River. The Thame River is the mother river of the Kingdom of Windsor. It runs through the capital of London and more than a dozen cities along the river. The river surface in the lower reaches becomes wider and flows into the North Sea. The river is wide, the waves are stable, and there are many large and small ports along the coast. It is a natural canal. In addition to cargo ships, there are also many sightseeing cruise ships on the Thame River. Although there are some differences, Wayne has a deep impression of this river. He vaguely remembers the tragedy that happened on this river. Lord Buddha, the foreign warships have arrived at our doorstep and said they would help us build a railway. Music.jpg. It was late at night, the river was covered with fog, and the indicator lights of ships could be vaguely seen flashing. Yulia followed Aubin and jumped, stepped on the river with 4 hooves, and followed the waves. Really walking on the water. Aubin had a keen sense of smell and ran fast on the water, looking for cruise ships that did not sleep at night. Nalundan is a famous city that never sleeps. Along the river, there is no shortage of rich people who stay up all night. If you are lucky, Wayne may bump into a cruise ship that is having a party. Soon, Aubin found a target. This is an extended sightseeing cruise ship with 2 floors, brightly lit and extremely luxurious. On the second floor open-air deck, wealthy businessmen and celebrities gathered and held a small concert on the Thame River. The melodious music and moving singing voice spread, slowly spreading along the river. The sound of nature made people reluctant to interrupt, and even the gloomy fog softened at this moment. The slightly shaking hull was not suitable for performances, but every musician present was a skilled master. With enough money, they were not afraid of any challenge. The female singer who sang was wearing a white dress. Her appearance, figure, and temperament were impeccable. She had standard golden long wavy hair. Under her beauty, the ladies present were somewhat eclipsed. There is never a lack of beauties around the rich and powerful. The fact that the female singer can outshine the others shows how amazing her charm is. But compared with her beauty, her voice is undoubtedly more moving, as smooth as silk and as agile as a spring. Immersed in this wonderful singing, it seems that all the stains on the soul have been washed away. If Wayne could see this female singer, he would find her very familiar. In the spellcasting teaching materials left by the original body, he married this female singer and they were inseparable and had sex 3 or 5 times a day. Lily Hayworth, the most popular female singer under the crotch. At this time, there was an exclamation from the boat. Everyone looked over with dissatisfaction, blaming the other party for being impolite, and interrupted the wonderful atmosphere with a clamor. But soon, more and more exclamations sounded. On the right side of the deck, more and more dignitaries gathered, looking at the terrifying figure passing through the fog with horror. It was a skeleton knight wearing black armor, with an undead warhorse under his crotch spewing purple flames, and a relatively short evil dog guarding beside him, just walking on the water without gravity. The pace of the warhorse was not fast, and it was generally not hurried or slow when taking a walk. The strong indifference of the Death Knight, wantonly wielding strong dominance and fearlessness, even if the figure was hazy, there was always part of the body blocked by the fog, and the powerful aura was still impossible to ignore. When staring into the abyss is also staring at you. When the cruise ship and the Death Knight passed by, the Death Knight slowly turned sideways, and the white flames in his eyes stabbed into everyone's hearts like a steel knife, and passed by little at an extremely slow but unstoppable speed. The dignitaries felt like they were falling into an icy cave, their clothes soaked with cold sweat. They wanted to escape but couldn't move their legs, and they couldn't even close their eyes and look away. At this moment, everyone felt a chill on their backs, as if a death scythe was hanging over their heads. The Death Knight withdrew his gaze, and the fog obscured his entire appearance, and he disappeared silently on the river. After the Death Knight left, everyone felt relieved. Some people choked up, some people collapsed, tears blurred their eyes and trouser legs, and some people shouted loudly, calling for the bodyguards on the lower deck to protect themselves. Facing death directly, the ugly appearance was exposed. Of course, there are always some exceptions. In the center of the second deck, a middle-aged man with handsome and upright features played with the ancient silver coin in his hand, squinting his eyes and looking at the direction where the Death Knight was going. He had black hair and black eyes, and was in his 30s. His facial features were not perfect when taken alone, but when put together, he had an irresistible masculine charm. Mature and intellectual, greasy and restrained. Behind him, a beautiful woman with short golden hair stood respectfully. The tailcoat was slim, with a waistline as wide as a palm, and the white gloves were close to the seams of the pants, standing upright. The beautiful lady had a delicate face and light makeup. She bent down and said, "Master Austin, do you want me to go and see? What are you looking at? How sharp is his sword?" Austin Landau shook the red wine glass in his hand and drank it all. "Don't bother yourself with irrelevant things. I don't want to send someone to salvage your body tomorrow. Just do your best. Let the musicians prepare and continue playing and singing." The housekeeper Megan looked at the panicked musicians, and a cold light flashed in her eyes, instantly dispelling the distracting thoughts in their hearts, and at the same time dispelling the terrifying clouds lingering over the cruise ship, so that a group of dignitaries also calmed down. Those who need to change pants, those who need to touch up makeup, pay attention to always stay elegant, the concert will continue. The melodious singing sounded again. 10 minutes later, the female singer bowed. She did not return to the lower deck. At the invitation of housekeeper Megan, she sat next to Austin. "Mr. Landau, I'm honored to be invited by you," Lily Hayworth said sincerely. "Miss Hayworth, I have a business to discuss with you." Austin smiled and looked at the beauty in front of him. "Please go ahead." Lily smiled slightly. She had heard of the reputation of the playboy. If it was right, she would talk about sleeping next. I want you to find a man and do everything you can to sleep with him. Ah, isn't it you? Think about it. This is my business card. Contact me when you figure it out. Aston picked up the red wine glass and asked the butler to hand over the business card. With your outstanding appearance, it is not safe in the city of London. After the matter is done, I promise that no one will harass you again. Aubin, Yulia, how did I perform just now? Excellent. Excellent. Hearing the praise from the two younger brothers, Wayne nodded. Sincere from the heart, but lacking cultural background, they are all ordinary stuff. The first day the butler was away, I missed him. After spreading the new urban legend, Wayne decided to withdraw his troops and return to the camp. Take a shortcut. The night in London is not safe. If he encounters a few magic girls who do not follow the code of chivalry, he will be defeated and be surrounded and annihilated on the spot. It is too dangerous outside, so hurry back to the cemetery and lie down. Aubin is still leading the way, and Yulia is moving forward in the dark with the cover of fog, but this time, there is a little accident. Before landing, Wayne asked Yulia to stop. Wait a minute. Wayne shook the reins and looked down at the wide river. 10 meters away from the shore, the Book of Greed issued a prompt, and a vengeful spirit that can be signed was captured right below. On the page of the Spirit of Vengeance, the bloody code wrote the contract, waiting for Wayne to sign and confirm. Wayne did not sign it immediately. Let's not beat around the bush. He has a high vision. Not everyone is qualified to be his spirit of vengeance. It's not that easy to be his dog. It was so funny that he didn't even go out to ask around. The Death Knight's horse cried and begged him to ride it. He reluctantly agreed because of the big sword. But then again, the ghost that could be locked by the Book of Greed must be something extraordinary. Maybe there's a way. Wayne touched the skull head, white light flickered in his eyes, and the river surface at the horse's feet rolled like boiling water. Mud rushed up, and after a while, Wayne saw what he had fished out from the bottom of the river. Gasoline barrel. To be precise, it was a gasoline barrel filled with cement. Tisk, humans are so scary. Restarting the myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 65. Thank you all readers for your support. The book will be published on the 8th at midnight, which is my usual update time. Thank you editors and everyone for your support. I often see familiar faces in this chapter. For example, XXXX, yes, it is you. Thank you for your company along the way. And Nuan Yangju, I am grateful for your kindness, so I won't thank you here. I am working hard to save the manuscripts and try to publish more. I won't say much about my gratitude. I will write and go ahead. You know me. It is inevitable that I am a little nervous when publishing a new book. I am worried about this and that. Just in case, I will sacrifice the novel for my close friends and relatives. I rely on friends when I am outside. Look, my friends have started to rely on me in this wave of sacrifices. The Taoist wants to ascend to heaven pei to go. In the mysterious world, I can change my fate by Taman. The immortal just wants to lie down Zhu Xin Cren. I can upgrade the female zombie Xiao Xiao by strategic level fantasy Ji Qi. I can refresh the golden finger every month Tian Ya Yu Zhao Jin. New book is being written, Fireworks into a City. My entry can be changed at Wilquan Zhenjiazu. I am immortal in history second update 2. Starting from a nuclear monster Big Face Cat Big Face. No one knows the devil cult better than me Fengchao Huang. This top star only treats being a star as a job pay to go. I am immortal in the martial arts world Ma Jialu. A person in a death row becomes a saint under a vest by Yi Shueshi. Saint, when the body is immortal, the magic power is boundless 1 inch of red heart. I became an immortal after the throne was abolished. Dreamcatcher. Who is going to be a professional after being reborn? Mysterious big watermelon. Defending Nanshan Park Tian Rui Shuofu. Becoming a god from a water monkey crust ant. Lu Mingfei doesn't want to be a superhero. Luoxiu makes tea. A great man from Liuzai by Kagwan. I have a scroll of Ghost and God Atlas Avocado. Me and AI 50-51 sword stabs. Myth origin Earl Orange. 2014, I want to be the governor. Fireworks are brilliant. They all call me Master Decadent Dragon. I have an immortal pupil. Zhang Laoxi. I am your natural enemy. Don't worry about the fried dough sticks. You can even tamper with the explosion rate. Clouds and mists in the sky. Starting from the development of Yujinjing to reach the other shore, I want to step by step. This priest is super righteous. You go to the bowl. Protect the evil. Looking for spring and continuing the day. Crown of the Shadow God. One sword cuts and cuts. My background is 5,000 years walking away for 80,000 miles. If there is no accident, the daily update after the launch is 7K-9K, and the average is guaranteed to be 8,000 words per day. I dare not say too much, my ability is limited, but my character is good. Basically I will fulfill what I said, so you can still believe the promise of 8,000 words per day. Finally, let's do something practical, 25,000 words on the day of the launch. Please order first. Please vote for the monthly ticket. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Restarting the Myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 66. Human beings are so terrible. Wayne touched the skull's head, thinking that he had also been threatened by a cement bucket, and he couldn't help but feel emotional. Indeed, humans are terrible. Yulia nodded in agreement. Very scary. Aubin made a sound of grievance, recalling the sad past, and the soul flame beating in his eyes trembled in a trance. Wayne. You two just have different feelings. In terms of scary, you both scared people to the point of peeing just now. With a wave of his hand, the boiling river water turned into a large tentacle, rolled up the gasoline barrel and threw it directly to the shore 10 meters away. There was a loud bang, the gasoline barrel deformed, large pieces of cement fell off, and a stench spread. Friends who often stuff people into cement buckets and sink them into rivers all know that if you do not mix cement and sand in a ratio of 1 to 3 or 4, but pour cement directly, the hardened cement will be very fragile and will be easily absorbed by the gases emitted from the body. Crack and deformation. Of course, the effect of adding sand is average, and it will still crack if it should, unless the corpse is first. Ahem, back to business. Wayne supported the undead horse and came to the shore. With his nod, Aubin stirred up the mist and roughly opened the box, breaking all the cement on the body. The corpse was dressed in a beige trench coat and kept a curled-up shape. Its hands were fastened behind its back with silver bracelets and its feet were tied. It was in a serious state of decomposition. In addition, Aubin's rough behavior tore off large pieces of flesh, making it impossible to identify the corpse. But the uniform under the deceased's windbreaker, the senior inspector's shoulder insignia, and the police badge that fell to the ground have already proved his profession. The fog rolled up the police badge and presented it to Wayne. He raised his hand to take it, brushed off the stains and confirmed that it was the Lundam police badge. The deceased was from the Lundam Police Department. He is a policeman with a story. Wayne's first thought was to take advantage of the gangsters. This senior inspector used his power to open the door to social groups. Because he repeatedly increased prices or took money to do nothing, he was retaliated by social groups and was killed. No, when did my thoughts become so dark? Wayne muttered, the shadow nightmare is so evil, it can erode a person's mind invisibly, and even a sunny boy like him can't resist it. Yes, that must be the case. He changed his mind and thought that the police were good policemen. He ignored the dissuasion of his colleagues and investigated a big shot. During this period, a large amount of evidence was seized and the big shot refused social donations. The angry big shot sent his men to stuff them into cement buckets and sink them into the river. Big shot. Wayne snorted coldly, thinking of the big shot who drove him out of London. If I remember correctly, the other party's threat was to stuff him into a cement bucket and sink him into the river. 30 years to the east of the Tame River, 30 years to the west of the Tame River, don't bully young people into poverty. The big shot must have never imagined that after 3 months, the ant that could easily be crushed to death would stand up. 3 months, do you know how I got through these 3 months? The butler took good care of me. He didn't have to worry about food or drink, and he even picked up a long-legged teacher. Wayne's anger surged, and black smoke crazily erupted from the skull's head. Looking from a distance, 2 white flames danced violently in the twisted black mist. Sensing the anger of their master, the undead war horses spit out purple flames, and the evil dogs looked up to the sky and howled. The enemy of an enemy is a friend. Wayne no longer thought about it, and he quickly left his name in the book of greed and signed the second spirit of vengeance. Humble prayers, resentful dead in vain, I hear your wails. Under the witness of the sacred contract, everything you have belongs to me. You can keep the past but lose the future. You have been given a chance to be reborn. You will become a spirit of vengeance, wielding the butcher knife for your master, your God, and me. Wayne did not avoid Yulia and awakened his second vengeful spirit in person. To be fair, there was no forced master-servant contract between Yulia and him, which was very different from Aubin. It is still a second-hand horse. The previous owner may come to the door at any time. Strictly speaking, it does not belong to him. But Wayne still trusted him and looked beyond the appearance to see the essence. Underneath the appearance that went against Wayne's aesthetics of justice, Yulia had a pure heart. He was far kinder than 99% of human beings, at least better than him, Wayne. Yulia offered her loyalty to Wayne, and Wayne trusted Yulia. If the trust was not absolute, it was absolute distrust, so he did not deliberately avoid her contracted spirit of vengeance. Yulia didn't know this. When she met Aubin, she knew that Aubin had a powerful master, powerful enough to create magical life and have the possibility of pulling out the shadow nightmare. Therefore, Yulia was not surprised to see the corpse in front of him come to life. The corpse wearing a beige trench coat slowly got up, river water dripping down the hem of the clothes, staring blankly at the undead war horse, evil dog, and the master who gave him a new life. At the same time, the image of the second dependent appeared on the pages of the Book of Greed and the Spirit of Vengeance. The man wore a beige coat, police uniform, and boots. His eyes were gray and his skin was moist and pale. There was always a water stain under his feet. It's a water ghost. Wayne was condescending, his skull head opened its upper and lower jaws, and he made a heavy voice, "Lift your head and look into my eyes." The man subconsciously looked at the 2 white lights, and the memories of the dead came to his mind, reminding him of his own name. Beau Philip. Philip recalled the past, and a picture flashed before Wayne's eyes. The first article is about 3 children sitting on the swing in the orphanage and talking about their dreams. The dream of 2 boys, Philip and Perry, is to become brave and fearless policemen. They are still young and do not understand what the policemen have to bear. They only know that the policemen on the street are very majestic and handsome. If they become policemen, no one dares to bully them. The girl Timmy fantasizes about becoming a teacher or a nurse, preferably a nurse. When Philip and Perry are injured, she can help bandage their wounds and give them injections if they are disobedient. In the second chapter, Timmy is adopted by a wealthy couple because of his good looks. Philip and Perry also leave the orphanage one by one and never meet again. In the third chapter, Philip becomes a policeman as he wishes. He is brave and fearless and has made many meritorious deeds. He meets Timmy when he saves a beautiful girl and falls in love with him at the speed of light. Timmy does not become a teacher or a nurse. Under the education of his adoptive parents, he works in the financial industry, that is, an office clerk. In the fourth chapter, Philip's colleague is injured, and a new partner comes to the office. Perry also realizes his childhood dream and becomes a policeman. On this day, the three members of the orphanage reunited, and the scene was warm and harmonious. In the fifth chapter, Philip investigated the missing person case and followed the underworld all the way up to find a congressman. He ignored Perry's advice and continued to dig deep for clues. With a bang, Philip fell straight down, and Perry stood expressionless behind him. The underworld held a farewell party for Philip. Perry stood with the underworld leader. He was a congressman's man. He had advised Philip, but the latter insisted on his own way, and he had no choice but to do so. Philip roared angrily, unwilling to believe all this, and questioned his childhood friend, "Where is the dream?" Perry smiled disdainfully, mocking Philip's naivete. In the city of London, there are too many people chasing dreams, but few succeed. People's dreams will eventually succumb to reality. For people like them at the bottom of society, if they want to jump over class barriers, they must have the help of noble people. If they blindly pursue illusory dreams, they will only stay at the bottom of society forever. Philip thought he had realized his dream, but in fact he was just a tool that was needed because of his value. Justice or something, it doesn't exist. Rightward arrow. Perry, I don't want to be a supporting role, I don't want to be a tool, I want to climb up and make everyone look up to me. Philip, I look down on you. Perry was not angry, he poured the cement calmly, and at the last moment when Philip's face was covered, he lightly expressed his love for Timmy. He hated Philip. Obviously everyone was working hard, and obviously he paid more, but Philip got everything. He was always a bystander and a supporting role. Ah! Philip curled up on the ground with his head in his arms. The flashback of memory made him fall into the abyss of pain. He loved this brother too much. The strong contrast, the two completely different faces of loyalty and cruelty overlapped alternately, making him angry and crazy, and then gave birth to a strong resentment. Resentment for betrayal. The Thames River rolled with huge waves, the calm river surface stirred up whirlpools, the undercurrent boiled, and the terrifying waves turned into waves, hitting the two banks again and again. Because he is a water ghost, his ability is related to water? Wayne looked at the turbulent river surface, and a string of question marks floated across his mind. Strictly speaking, Philip was drowned by cement, not the Thames River. So, cement is also water? Be quiet, you disturbed the balance of the night. Wayne waved his hand and sprinkled magic, which rained on Philip like raindrops. The latter's rotten body slowly changed, and finally turned into a drowned chicken wearing a police uniform and coat, with a pale face and wet body. I give you a new life, you live again because of me, my spirit of revenge. Beau Philip is the past, from today on, you are called Abo. Wayne sat on the horse, drew out the white bone sword and pointed it at Philip, waiting for the other party to kneel on one knee to accept the new life. However, it didn't happen. The first time the spirit of revenge woke up, it needed to complete the revenge for the previous life. This is the case with Aubin and Abo. They both have strong obsessions that cannot be let go. Abo is a human being with more ideas and more obsessions. Looking at the powerful and evil master in front of him, Abo's heart was cold. It was the villain and the big devil who gave him a new life. Once upon a time, his dream was to go through fire and water for justice and to do whatever it took to help the weak, until he gave his life. He never expected that after a night's sleep, he would become a minion of evil. What is the difference between this and Perry serving the congressman? Oh, there is a big difference. The congressman is not as evil as the big devil. My master, After I complete my revenge, can you grant me eternal sleep? Abio said bitterly. His dream has always been to be a partner of justice, and he does not want to serve evil. Roar, roar, roar. Yulia spewed flames. Aben stepped forward, his ears stood up, and he bared his fangs and gave a warning roar. Boy, I advise you not to be ignorant of your honor. It's not too late to kneel down and apologize now. X2. Aben doesn't like Abio. This bastard is a bit ungrateful. Unlike him, he didn't ask for any conditions at that time. I heard your call and came here. Why did I wake up and then sleep again? Haven't you slept enough? Wayne pressed his hand, signaling Aben and Yulia not to get excited. If they learn more from their master, he won't be angry. It's normal for young people to make mistakes and not know what to do. Take him in as a dog first, and then you can make things difficult for him later. Abio was silent for a moment, and said slowly, I want to be a good person. He. Wayne laughed and pointed at himself, Aben, and Yulia. What, do we look like bad people? Abio. This is not a question of resemblance. I know what you are afraid of. There is no need. I can also tell you straightforwardly. It doesn't matter what you think. It's up to me. Wayne looked at Abio condescendingly. Abio, remember, the moment you wake up, you are my dog. Whatever I want you to do, you must do it. Abio bit his lower lip, and before he could say anything, Wayne continued, go, vent the anger in your heart, complete your revenge for the past, cut off your past, from now on, your future will belong to I. Abio didn't move, and Wayne sneered, counting the time, you have been dead for half a year. Let me guess, is your beautiful girlfriend lying in your brother's arms now? Boom. A thunder exploded above Abo's head. Yes, his past was not only filled with hatred, but also love. He resented not only the betrayal, but also himself, for having failed his lover. He had obviously promised the other party that he would go home early that night and enjoy a candlelight dinner with Timmy, but he was already half a year late. Abio turned around suddenly, jumped into the water and disappeared. Master, do you want to follow me and take a look? It's not good, it's been half a year, maybe the horse is getting dismounted over there. Princes Street, London West End. The fog in the middle-class neighborhood was not very thick. It was already after early morning, and a few cars passed slowly on the streets near the residential area, with few pedestrians passing by. Abio got out of the sewer like a drowned rat and stared at a window on the 5th floor in silence. After a while, he climbed up to the balcony using his hands and feet. Like Aben, Abio also needs to be fed by Wayne's magic. Because he refused to serve his master, he did not receive magic power. He was in a weak state at this time. His skill panel was gray and many abilities could not be used. Moreover, he had just woken up and he still didn't know what he was. He naively thought that he was just a dead soul awakened by the devil. As a water ghost, Abio cannot stay away from the tame river or the water, otherwise his body will dry up quickly and all attributes will decline, making him no different from the uncle and aunt in the cemetery. Just as Aben was confined to the Lundam fog, Abio was confined to the river Tame, and both were left extremely weak once they left their own territory. Solution: obey your master and get rewarded with magic. Abio stood on the balcony and looked into the bedroom through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His girlfriend Timmy was curled up on the bed, with a haggard face and heavy dark circles under her eyes. Her originally beautiful long hair was now dry and without any luster. The bedside table was filled with photos of the two of them. You've lost weight. Abio murmured to himself, raising his hand to push open the floor-to-ceiling window, but in the end he didn't have the courage. He is dead and his future is doomed. He can't give his lover anything, not even a promise. What's the point of meeting each other at this time, igniting the flame of hope and then extinguishing it with your own hands, making each other suffer forever? You are a good girl. Forget about me. I don't deserve it. Abio closed his eyes in pain, leaned against the wall and dug into his pockets, looking for a cigarette to calm down, but only took out a wet cigarette case. Hey, your girlfriend is quite beautiful and has good bones. A haunting voice sounded, and Abio suddenly opened his eyes and looked towards the source of the sound. The undead warhorse was facing down, its hooves stepping on the wall as if it were walking on the ground. On horseback, his master lowered his head and said, "This flower of life is about to wither. I can help speed it up so that you can continue to love each other after death." Bang! Abio knelt down directly and said loyally, "My kind master, I like the name you gave me very much. I am willing to dedicate my future to you. Even if I fall into hell and become a devil, I will have no regrets. I just ask you to let go live my past." Who's out there? Restarting the myth. Author, Feng Chao Huang. Chapter 67. Philip has been missing for half a year, and Timmy has also suffered from insomnia for half a year. Although many people are pessimistic about Philip's disappearance, it is impossible to declare Philip dead from a legal perspective in just half a year. He may have accepted a secret mission from the police station, or he may have been recruited by a national secret organization. He is currently undergoing fully closed training. There are many possibilities, and this and that reason prevents him from contacting the outside world. These reasons supported Timmy's fragile nerves, so that she did not fall directly, and was willing to wait for her boyfriend to return. She waited for half a year. Timmy suffered from insomnia, was confused during the day, and could not sleep at night. Her poor mental state made her persuaded to leave the company, and she lived alone in a rental house and refused to contact the outside world. Long-term insomnia made Timmy's nerves very sensitive, and any slight movement could wake her up from her light sleep. She shouted twice, and seeing no one answering outside the window, she picked up the bat beside the bed and carefully came to the French window. There was no one, and there was no one hiding on the walls on both sides of the window, only a puddle of wet water stains. Timmy was stunned for a moment, and her heart ached for some reason. She sat back on the bed and thought about the strange voice just now. It seemed that her boyfriend was talking. Her mental state was very bad. She couldn't tell whether it was a dream or an auditory hallucination. After thinking about it for a long time, she called her friend Perry. Perry was Philip's good brother and her childhood playmate. In the past 6 months, if Perry hadn't been busy and promised to do his best to find Philip, she doubted whether she could stick to it. In half a year, Perry became Timmy's most trusted person, far more than her good girlfriend who hadn't visited her for a long time. Timmy even formed a habit. Whenever there was a problem that couldn't be solved, she would ask Perry for help. Roof. Abio knelt on one knee, and in front of him was Wayne, who was riding a dead warhorse and half of his body was shrouded in mist. The latter tilted his head to listen, and said in a gloomy voice, "Your girlfriend called your enemy late at night. It seems that our little brother Perry concealed it very well and completely gained your girlfriend's trust. So, he will confess tonight, right?" Abio kept silent with a stern face, angry flames dancing in his grey eyes. At this moment, he felt a huge surge of magic power flowing into his body, and his drying body immediately became moist. Abio didn't understand and raised his head in confusion. "What are you doing? Go kill him." Wayne sneered, "Are you going to let him in? Or are you willing to put down your hatred for love, think that your enemy can take good care of your girlfriend, and are ready to help them?" Abio shook his head and said concisely, "He doesn't deserve it. I'm starting to like you a little bit. Keep it up and bring his head to see me first." Wayne put his fingers together to form a sword, and a grey longsword with a breath of death was inserted in front of Abio. "I don't like dogs who procrastinate. Go and come back quickly. Aubin will help you." Abio looked at the longsword in front of him and stretched out his hand to pull it up. The moment he stretched out his hand, he saw the police uniform exposed from the cuffs of his coat and finally withdrew his hand. "Master, I want the law to judge him." "Is that so?" Wayne nodded. "It's not impossible, but you have to be mentally prepared. He can even kill his brothers for his master. His master will not give up such a loyal dog easily. Are you sure you want to go through legal procedures?" "I'm sure. I will find out everything and send the congressman to prison together," Abio said firmly. "Then go, don't make me wait too long." Wayne nodded, letting Aben lead the way, and disappeared into the mist on his undead warhorse. Until Wayne left, Abio breathed a sigh of relief. Being by his master's side, he was under tremendous pressure every moment, and felt that if he was not careful, his soul would be wiped out. Abio knew that the city of London was hiding some kind of strange power, and the urban legend was not groundless, but he did not expect that the degree of strangeness was so strong that he could still live until half a year ago by walking at night every night. It was simply a miracle. He stood on the roof without moving, and saw the car lights approaching from a distance. His eyes focused on the driver's face hundreds of meters away, and then he jumped off the roof. The car lights came from far away. Perry held the steering wheel, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. The counselor had warned him not to walk around in London at night, and he could go to the inner London city as little as possible to the West District and the North District, but he could not set foot in the East District and the South District. The less developed the economy, the more dangerous it was. The counselor has someone above him, and the intelligence is reliable, and he will not talk nonsense. Perry remembered her advice, and after his good brother disappeared without a reason, he rarely went out at night. However, tonight was different. Timmy called for help, and his chance came. Moreover, Timmy lived in the West District, which was not a backward and poor area in the strict sense, and it was not considered a violation of the counselor's order. Perry looked at the passenger seat, where a blooming rose was placed. The implication was obviously encouraging him. If the time was right, he would express his admiration tonight. He had thought of the lines, and he would love Timmy twice as much as his good brother. Thinking of this, Perry couldn't help but raise his mouth, and he had already seen the scene of himself staying at Timmy's house overnight. After half a year, he was finally able to get promoted. Bang! A loud noise interrupted Perry's fantasy and dragged him back to reality. The car seemed to have hit something, splashing a lot of water and blurring the front window glass. Perry hurriedly stepped on the brakes and got out of the car to check on the injured. He was in the rising period of his career, and he must not let a car accident affect his career. There was nothing in front of the car, and the front cover showed no signs of deformation. It was just water, and it didn't hit anything. Perplexed, Perry returned to the driver's seat and started the vehicle again. At this moment, a cold breath came, and a cold palm pressed down on Perry's neck. The latter's eyes suddenly shrank, and without him noticing, someone sneaked into the back seat of the car. Who is it? Coincidence or planned? It must be a coincidence that he went out just after receiving the call and had no plans for tonight. But with such skillful techniques, he must be no ordinary robber. In an instant, Perry thought a lot. He used his body to cover himself and put his hands in his arms. At the same time, he pretended to be relaxed and said, "Man, I understand the rules. I will cooperate with the money. Please let me go." "I won't. The police will be called." "It's me." A faint voice sounded, implying sarcasm, and the hairs on Perry's body went cold. He suddenly looked in the rearview mirror and saw a pale face without blood in the back seat where the light and darkness were intertwined. The good brother he killed with his own hands is back. The horrific scene was beyond Perry's cognition, and the cold palm covering his neck made him suffocate. He tried to calm down, but it was useless. His teeth trembled and he said, "Bo, you are back, you, it's great that he's not dead. Please, I must still be alive. As you can see, I am already dead. The water in the river Tame is very cold, especially at the bottom of the river. Whether it is winter or summer, it is too cold for me to sleep well. Abio leaned his upper body and got close to Perry's frightened face. That's why I came to find you. Come down with me. Maybe the two of you will be warmer. There was a bang. Perry was so frightened that he shot him directly in the head. Under his horrified gaze, there was not a drop of blood on Abo's face, and the bullet holes in the twisted flesh shrank and recovered, but the dead man's face remained indifferent. It's useless. Have you forgotten the cement you poured with your own hands? Rightward arrow. A strong sense of suffocation swept through his body. Perry continuously pulled the trigger and emptied the magazine in one breath. Before he passed out, he seemed to hear something in his ears. I'm not you, I won't kill my childhood memories, the law will punish you. Tell your master that this case is not closed. I will continue to investigate until you are brought to justice. Let's talk about the other side. Wayne rides an undead warhorse and, with the help of Aubin, travels through the mystery of the dense fog where he can't even see his fingers. As long as he is not cheek to cheek, even if he is walking side by side with a passerby, the other person will not be able to see him. At this time, Wayne was located in the West End of London. Speaking of the West End, he immediately thought of the den of sun goddess believers, that gay gym with wrestling. When it came to the gym, Wayne's mind wandered. He stepped on the watermelon rind and thought of those lewd and muscular coaches, especially the head coach named Chicken. The old boy bullied him severely because of the young man's respect for the old and his love for the young and his unwillingness to be general. Willie was there at the time, but Wayne didn't want to lose face, so he smiled and didn't take it to heart. Now that the opportunity has come, why don't he pretend to be a Death Knight and go to the gym to get a membership card? No, why would I want a gay at night? Doesn't Willie smell good? When it comes to magical girls, my bones immediately become excited. After not seeing each other for 3 months, Wayne missed them and continued to torture his soul, wondering who the delicate touch of his hand was. The skeleton stretched out his hand and grabbed it in mid-air. By the way, there is also that stupid snowy owl, which is 3 months old, and I wonder if it has been raised to death by Veronica. Suddenly, Wayne realized a problem. The Death Knight is the younger brother of the goddess of death. The goddess of death and the goddess of darkness are allies and the mortal enemies of the 3 goddesses of nature, sun, and moonlight. He wears the vest of the Death Knight, which is equivalent to standing on the opposite side of the magical girl and the teacher. Wayne. Not to mention, it's quite interesting. Wait a minute, stop at the subway station ahead. Why, does the master think I'm not as good as the subway? Well, you don't have any flesh on your body. It's uncomfortable to sit on your bones. Master, you don't have any meat either. Shut up, don't talk back to me. At the entrance of the subway station, Wayne used Aubin's cover to hide in the fog and sneak into the tunnel. At this time, the subway has stopped running, and the tunnel is dark and unusually quiet. Although there is no light, there is no fog, and a large number of 4 elements who have fled have gathered. Wonderful. Get the Holy Land for practice. Wayne happily found a pit to sit down, and opened his mind to accept the 4 elements that came to him. At the same time, he suddenly thought, since the 4 elements are gathered in the subway tunnel, will it be the same in the sewer? Since the Landau family is so rich, is it possible that, like the town of Inlord, they also built secret sewers for family members to use? I want to be a housekeeper again. It would be nice if he was here. Dawn. The sun rises as usual, the fog disappears tacitly, and at the dock and port, freighters dock with seagulls, and the streets and alleys of London City become lively again. It's not just ordinary people who are excited, but magicians too. Although the news of the Death Knight's appearance has not appeared in the newspapers and become a new urban legend, it has spread throughout the magic circle in London. Xi Fei's head was as big as a bucket. She was just talking, but she didn't expect the Death Knight to actually arrive in London. After a phone call last night, she started working overtime all night before she got off work. Good news, you don't have to remove and reapply makeup, which saves a lot of time. Bad news, the witnesses are very sure, the Death Knight is here for real, so there is no need to remove makeup today. SPHY is going crazy, and she feels like she won't need to sleep for many days to come. There is still no clue about the pursuit of the Dark Knight, and another Death Knight has come. Did these two guys make an appointment to make a big event in London? She immediately contacted the headquarters of the Church of Nature and told them about the crisis in London. The headquarters attached great importance to it and sent the elites of the Scalpel organization to investigate the underground tomb of Paris and verify the whereabouts of the Death Knight. The result given was that the Death Knight was still in Paris. The headquarters asked SPHY to confirm again whether the news that the Death Knight appeared in London was reliable. Why is this the case, two Death Knights? SPHY did not think she had received false information, because the witness had a jerk husband. Although the latter's magic attainments were average, he had a lot of money, a wide range of connections, and an extraordinary vision. If the jerk husband might be wrong, the housekeeper Megan would never be wrong. The Death Knight was real and did appear in London. Sci-fi also had no doubt whether the information from Paris was wrong. She had led the Scalpel organization and trusted her subordinates very much. The soldiers she led would not make major mistakes. The Death Knight is the only exclusive to the goddess of death. There is only one and it is impossible for two to appear at the same time. The question is, which of the two Death Knights is fake? Sci-fi tends to believe that the Death Knight is in Paris. The underground tomb is the lair of the Death Knight. Without the order of the goddess of death, the Death Knight will not run away from home. From a strategic point of view, the alliance of darkness and death, one occupies Paris and the other occupies London. Putting them together will only waste resources. Unless London hides something that the goddess of death cares about, she will not hesitate to invade the territory of her allies for this. Ding-ling-ling. The phone rang, and Sci-fi shuddered. She has recently suffered from telephone ring phobia. Every time the phone rang, she would feel panic, palpitations, and rapid heartbeats, accompanied by symptoms such as chest tightness, and she wanted to punch the phone to death. Unfortunately, she couldn't. Sci-fi unbuttoned a button on her chest, fanned herself, and took 3 or 5 seconds to pick up the phone expressionlessly. If nothing unexpected happened, something must have happened again. That's great. She likes to work, and fulfilling work makes her happy. After a while, Sci-fi put down the phone, leaned back and slumped in the chair, sighing listlessly. As she expected, something did happen. An elemental collapse occurred at the West End subway station last night, involving 4 platforms in front and behind. The magician in charge of the investigation broke out in a cold sweat after entering the scene, and quickly led the team to evacuate, calling the place where the incident occurred an elemental restricted area. It was so scary that I almost thought I had entered the forbidden magic area. Sci-fi stared at the ceiling with a blank mind, thinking of nothing. She didn't understand. The Kingdom of Windsor was fine before, why did she suddenly have a series of big and small incidents as soon as she became the High Priest? Did the dragon blood curse break out? When you are unhappy, think about people who are more unlucky, and you will be happy. Sci-fi thought of his own funny guy Wayne, and thought that he would have to rely on the students' laughter for the rest of his life, so he called a carrier pigeon to pass on a message. Recently, London is not safe. There are Death Knights and elemental forbidden areas, which are not friendly to novice magicians like Wayne. Lock yourself in the house and don't go anywhere. If possible, it's not too late to go back to Enrod Town now. The housekeeper doesn't mind taking care of him for another 3 months. Restarting the Myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 68. London is very dangerous recently, especially at night. Stay at home and don't go anywhere. Wayne received the message from the teacher, and nodded, agreeing with her. The night in London is shrouded in fog, which greatly weakens the perception of magicians. No one is sure what is hidden in the dark, and no one can tell clearly. For example, those illusory urban legends, even if only half of them are true, are enough to prove how terrible the night in London is. Let's not talk about the distant ones, just talk about Yulia. The Death Knight's warhorse wandered around at night and became friends with the evil hound. The two skeletons wandered around at night and were very unfriendly to ordinary people. If it weren't for the kind hearts under the brutal appearance of Yulia and Aben, who were unwilling to cause destruction everywhere, these two alone would be enough. There was quite a lot of noise. Yulia and Aben can be kind, but it's hard to say about other monsters. Wayne listened to his teacher and decided to walk less at night recently. Go to the sewer instead. Wayne released the white pigeon and found that this carrier pigeon was disposable. It didn't fly far after being released, and squatted directly in a corner in the backyard of the detective agency. You'd better stay away from that piece of land, blocking Aben's doghouse. For ordinary people, white pigeons are everywhere, which is not surprising. Many squares have white pigeons specially raised, but in the eyes of magicians, seeing white pigeons is easy to associate with carrier pigeons, and infer that the owner is a magician. Wayne didn't want to reveal his identity, so he waved his hand to call the white pigeons, grabbed a handful of corn to feed them, and released his own white pigeons to let them play together. Coo 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 x2. Coo. After a brief exchange, Wayne's white pigeon chased away the disposable white pigeon, occupied all the corn, and tilted its head to stare at its owner. That look seemed to say, "When did you get another bird outside?" Wayne rolled his eyes and promised not to bring pigeons home casually in the future. The white pigeon gave up and lowered its head to peck at the food that belonged only to it. For the first time, Wayne knew that carrier pigeons had territorial awareness. The problem is, the snowy owl will not chase the white pigeon away. They are both daily use types, and there is no such thing as taking shifts during the day and night. It's careless. Wayne scratched his head. It was the only way to do it now. Thinking about the snowy owl that looked at people through the slits of its eyes, he expected the white dove to knock it over with its butt. It can only be said that he was looking forward to it. Owls look cute, but they are real birds of prey. Like lions and tigers, which belong to the same cat family, they are at the top of the food chain and have almost no natural enemies in nature. The white dove was pecking at corn on the desk, while Wayne began to write furiously. He was rushing to write in his diary and quickly shape his glorious image before the next victim appeared. Half an hour later, Wayne put down the pen in his hand and looked up at the door outside the office. Someone was opening the door. But it was not a thief. In terms of smell, it was a magical girl who was attracted to the tentacle monster. Veronica put away the key, locked the door of the detective agency, pushed open the door of the office, and leaned against the door frame with her hands on her shoulders. "It was you, I knew you were back." "How did you know? Did the housekeeper tell you?" Wayne secretly thought that it was a mistake. He had promised the teacher not to reveal his whereabouts, but he was still exposed. However, this cannot be blamed on FLA. Veronica is the eldest daughter of the Landau family. How can a servant lie to the master for an outsider? Wayne was slightly disappointed. After all, he was not FLA's master, and his status in the latter's mind was not as good as Veronica's. He stood up and walked towards Veronica, opening his arms to give her a long-awaited hug, but was naturally rejected by Veronica. Veronica walked quickly to the desk and sat down, sparing it's interesting to read Wayne's diary. As a follower, she is very interested in Wayne's endless lies and is curious about how many tricks he can come up with. An upright and kind-hearted young man in society. Veronica was amused by the jokes in the diary. The female college student was glad that she met social garbage, suffered losses, and was deceived, and deeply realized the duplicity of human nature. These knowledge were taught by teachers in school and mentioned repeatedly, but the knowledge in the classroom is not as clear as personal practice. What's next? Why is it gone? Still writing. Give you a pen, write now, you write while I read. Wayne closed the diary. The diary is a sacred personal privacy. It's enough to be almost done. There is no reason to repeatedly publicly punish it. Veronica looked disappointed. She still saw more of the dark side of society. Wayne changed the subject. You haven't said it yet. How did you know that I went back to London? Did the housekeeper tell you? FLA didn't say it. I guessed it myself. Veronica called the villa to comfort Wayne and wait a little longer. She also told him that Chris's birthday was on the 7th and she had helped prepare Wayne's gift. Butler FLA answered the phone and said that Wayne was not available now and would call back when he was free. Veronica didn't think much about it at the time. The next day, Wayne was still busy when she called. She immediately realized that FLA was hiding something. Come to the detective agency to confirm Wayne's whereabouts. FLA is really lying. Veronica looked at Wayne suspiciously, wondering what this guy was capable of. He actually instigated the butler of the Landau family to lie to the family master. Did FLA also read the diary? That shouldn't be the case. FLA is not a fool. On Wayne's side, he was greatly relieved when he heard Veronica's reply. She was indeed a unique butler in his mind. She was so kind and righteous. If Veronica hadn't been a little smart, she would have hidden this incident. Why did you suddenly return to London? Are you not afraid of being stuffed into a cement bucket and drowned by a big shot? Veronica asked curiously. She felt it was necessary to remind Wayne that the big shot was very powerful in London. Mr. Landau had spent 3 months without making any progress. He was most likely a member of the royal family. No, someone has already helped me deal with that big shot. Impossible, even he. Veronica didn't believe it and frowned. Tell me, who is it? Wayne, don't blame me for not reminding you that there is no such thing as love without reason. Be careful of the other person's bad intentions. She is my teacher. She taught me magic and introduced me to the Palace of Magic. What, you have a teacher, and you're still a female teacher? Isn't she pretty? Veronica was shocked. As a student, I shouldn't comment on my teacher's appearance, but she is indeed very beautiful, almost perfect. Wayne praised Sci-fi without hesitation. Then be careful. There is no reason for such a beautiful and powerful magician to take extra care of you. She must have a conspiracy and may sacrifice you one day. Veronica pouted. Mr. Landau once said that the more beautiful a woman is, the more likely she is to lie. If you think she didn't lie to you, maybe she covets her beauty. Why, your surname is not Landau, but John. Wayne rolled his eyes. Don't talk nonsense, I respect the teacher very much. What about the promise you made to Chris? You said you would join the Moonlight Church. Well, my teacher believes in the goddess of nature. From now on, we will both be believers in the goddess of nature. Wayne shrugged. He was wrong to break his promise, but Chrissy has a broad mind and will definitely forgive him. That's it? Veronica blinked and faced Wayne's contemptuous gaze. She blushed and retracted her previous evaluation of the female magician. There was no conspiracy or sacrifice. The other party believed in the goddess of nature and must be a good person. Then what should I do about the promise I made to Chris? I said I would join the Moonlight Church. Wayne returned the favor. What does it have to do with me? It's not what I promised. Veronica murmured in a low voice and changed the subject flexibly. What's the name of that elegant lady? She can do things that Mr. Landau can't do. She must be very famous. Maybe I even know her. It's inconvenient to disclose this. The teacher has been in trouble recently and won't let me tell anyone that I am her student. As you can see, I am very obedient. I stayed in the room and didn't go anywhere. I didn't even contact you on the phone. After hearing this, Veronica stopped asking questions and was still a little unhappy at the same time. Although she is very popular in school and is sought after by many schoolmates, she is a star-level schoolgirl. In fact, she has very few friends, including her roommate Willie and the previous schoolgirl Chrissy. Veronica is humble and courteous to others, and never forgets the aristocratic elegance. Her way of doing things makes her seem easy to talk to, but if you say a few more words, you will find that she is not an enthusiastic person, and her personality tends to be indifferent, stubborn, and somewhat sinister and likes to be alone. Over time, Veronica has developed an aura that ostracizes others. She can be the idol star of the college, but she cannot be the intimate big sister of the schoolgirls. The formation of character is related to family. Her parents were in the Cold War and separated, and her mother went to Frank Paris. In other words, the dragon-blooded girl was a little better than her peers, otherwise she would have been bullied on campus. Of course, it is not ruled out that some students have this idea and were threatened by cement buckets before they even took action. Let's put it this way, in the entire women's college, only Willie and Chris can break the aura of indifference. Willie is more powerful. Not only can she break the aura, but she can also be beaten into a ball by Veronica. Some time ago, Veronica reluctantly defined Wayne as a friend and was happy to expand her social circle. Unexpectedly, Wayne downgraded her friend level and added a wild teacher above her. Huh, what's so great, you've been demoted too. By the way, since you are back, I will send your owl over tonight. It's so urgent, please help me take care of it for a while. It was at odds with Monica and almost got into a fight several times. Veronica refused. There is a black cat named Monica in Veronica's house. It is Mr. Landau's pet. It has always been taken care of by the housekeeper Megan. Mr. Landau is only responsible for petting the cat and has never shoveled poop, not even once. Snowy owls and black cats are both felines. Because their colors are completely opposite, they are very unpleasant to get along with. Even if they are assigned to different villas, the two cats will secretly have sex. If this continues, sooner or later the cat will die. Okay, I don't go out much recently, so I might as well develop a relationship with it. Wayne secretly thought it was a pity that there was another mouth in the house. The Wayne family is not the Landau family. There are no servants to shovel poop, and there are no rat strips and rat slices readily available. He hopes that the snowy owl will mature as soon as possible and learn to make enough food and clothing by himself. One more thing, have you ever considered moving the detective agency to another location? Veronica asked. Move somewhere else. Wayne thought about this question seriously and said after a moment, I did think that the location of the detective agency is too remote and I can't get big orders, so I can move to a wealthy neighborhood. I will soon. I'll pay. Veronica interrupted directly. Wayne might not know that the detective agency encountered a crisis some time ago. The landlord came to collect rent. She spent money to settle the other party. 2 days later, Wayne's home was gone. Then I have no problem. You can move wherever you say. Wayne agreed with both hands. He was not ashamed to eat soft rice. There was no need. The title of other people's essays was My Father, the President of the Bank. I will ask someone to choose a location. When the time comes, you can move there directly. Remember to leave me an assistant position. Are you serious? Yeah. Veronica nodded. Her mother went home, but not long after, she quarreled with Mr. Landau again. The two met and were weird. They didn't look like qualified parents at all. She was very annoyed and wanted to find a place to be quiet. Wayne's detective agency is good. You can follow the diary at any time, but the distance is too far. Every time you go back and forth, it takes a lot of time. If the detective agency moves, there will be no such trouble. Veronica left and locked the door of the detective agency from the outside. Before leaving, he said he would send the owl as soon as possible. Wayne also asked the other party to help conceal the news and never tell Willie and Chris that he was back. Especially Willie, otherwise the gays would block the door and play chest-breaking stones the next day. Okay, but you'd better give Chris an explanation. She stayed up late every night to write teaching materials for your tutoring class, and she has been writing until the 4th grade. Veronica stretched out her hand and compared it. It was about this thick. Wayne was deeply ashamed. Chris was worried about getting him into the Moonlight Church, but as soon as he turned around, he fell into the arms of the goddess of nature. Isn't this a kind of minotaur? Wayne didn't want to owe anyone a favor. After thinking about it, he decided to take the one-on-one tutoring class. He had broken his promise once for not being able to join the Moonlight Church. If he wasted Chris's carefully written teaching materials again, wouldn't he be worse than a beast? Go, no matter what. After sending Veronica away, Wayne continued to write his diary while waiting for news from Abio. Get revenge as soon as possible and get a job as soon as possible. Signing a contract with the spirit of vengeance can gain the other party's abilities. The skills that Aubin brought to Wayne are smell and supernatural perception. The former is still within the scope of biology, and the latter is more or less beyond the limit of the instinct of wild animals. Wayne guessed that it was related to the Book of Greed, and it was not ruled out that Aubin was a special case. So many pets died in the shelter, and only Aubin became a vengeful spirit, which shows that he is special. Abio is also special. He has a special bloodline in his body, and the skills he brought to Wayne are gunmanship and supervision. Supervision allows Wayne to see farther, and can also see subtle things that require the help of equipment to observe. His eyes can switch freely between telescopes and microscopes. At the same time, he can see more colors. Adding magic amplification, supervision can also be further enhanced. Gunmanship can be understood. As a police officer, Abio is good at pistols. It is reasonable and logical, but supervision is difficult to explain. I hope to draw a steel body next time. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Restarting the Myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 69. July 8th, Night. Diamond suit, diamond suit. A black car stopped at the door of Wayne Detective Agency. The servant knocked on the door according to the code of 2 short and 1 long. After 3 times, the bird cage covered with black cloth was put down. There was also a large bag of rat strips. Wayne climbed over the wall and brought the bird cage into the house. He was speechless. Where did the code come from? Was it Veronica who told him, or was it the servant who added the drama himself? Little peculiar, there are quite a lot of dramas. He put the bird cage on the desk and lifted the black cloth to see the real Little Peculiar. It was still the fresh and refined face, which made people's fists hard. Wayne opened the bird cage, and the snowy owl came out by itself. It didn't like the cramped bird cage, and its head rotated 270 degrees to find a suitable place to land. After looking around, it seemed that the top of Wayne's head was more suitable. Flap the wings, take off. Wayne pressed his head down. Where are you flying to? Wayne looked down at the snowy owl, looked down at it, and took out a rat strip and handed it over. From today on, your name is Axu, do you understand? As a nighttime messenger bird cultivated by the 3 Goddesses Alliance, owls have extraordinary wisdom. They can understand the language of magicians. After cultivating enough tacit understanding, owls can communicate directly with their owners. The snowy owl is a veteran among messengers. It has a face that deserves a beating. It has not been beaten to death for so many years, so it should be smarter. Wayne held the rat strip and waited. As long as the other party spoke, it would be considered as acquiescing to this name. The snowy owl did not speak, but looked at Wayne with squinted eyes. Its extraordinary temperament made Wayne's fists itch. He snorted and said, "Acceptance can be divided into two types, one is to be decent by yourself, and the other is to be decent for you. Be honest, don't force me to let the dog bite you." The snowy owl still did not speak, squinting his eyes and preparing to sleep. "Aubin, come in." Wayne was happy. If it was another magician, it would be a good thing for the carrier bird to have the same personality as the owner, but if it was him, today he and the snowy owl must change their ways. Aubin heard his master's call, wagging his tail, and ran happily into the office from the back door. He sniffed the smell of rat strips in the air and immediately looked disgusted. The snowy owl stared at Aubin with golden eyes wide open, staring at Aubin in a daze, with an anthropomorphic expression of surprise on its round face. "Give it something powerful." Wayne stopped talking halfway. There was no other reason. The snowy owl opened its mouth to hold the rat strips, lifted its legs and pressed it with its claws, and then ate it slowly. "So fast. You are too cowardly." Wayne felt that he had chosen the wrong carrier bird. If it were his personality, he would definitely not yield to torture and would not even frown. "Master, are you going to walk the dog tonight?" Aubin asked expectantly. "I'm free anyway, so I'll take a walk. I'll go to the cemetery in the first half of the night and the subway station in the second half of the night." Wayne plans to walk through the sewers tonight. The sewers in London are nearly 2,000 kilometers long, with rainwater and sewage separated, and the flood control and drainage channels are very spacious. Because of the complex terrain, the sewer committee that coordinates the construction and management has no idea what their underground looks like. They often walk from the sewers to the air raid shelters, and turn around and hey, they are at the subway station. Wayne is very much looking forward to this uncultivated virgin land, imagining the scene of galloping in the sewers. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. He plans to open up a few routes tonight, and then gradually develop new routes so that when he is chased by a strong enemy one day, he can get rid of the opponent in the sewers. "Wayne, no one knows sewers better than me. Axew, you stay here tonight to look after the house. The rat strips are on the table. Remember not to eat too much." In the backyard, Wayne gave an order, raised his hand in the air, and the agile undead warhorse jumped out of the thick fog. He mounted the warhorse and shook his head. Before he could pull out the shadow nightmare, the whole person was covered by a grey vortex and turned into a death knight with a skull head. Aubin jumped out of the courtyard wall, and Wayne rode his horse and followed closely, leaving Axew squatting at the door of the backyard. A pair of big eyes were wide open. "Death Knight. He is the Death Knight. Impossible, his magic is so pure, it has never been tainted by death. How could he be the most proud knight of death? He should be the most outstanding one favored by God." Axew murmured, guessing to herself, maybe the knights of God are like this, they can perfectly conceal their own beliefs. The Death Knight appeared in London and secretly infiltrated the Church of Nature. Should I remind them? Forget it, it's not the Church of the Sun, what does it have to do with me? Just thinking about it, Axew felt a strong sense of crisis. He was chosen by the Death Knight to become the other party's messenger bird. This was no coincidence. The Death Knight found the base of the Sun Goddess believers, saw through its identity, and prepared to use it to make a move on the Church of the Sun. Not right, if that's the case, he doesn't need to expose himself. Besides, I am willing to come out with him. Axew's round face showed anthropomorphic confusion. It's okay to be right or wrong. This question is too difficult and it can't figure it out. Cemetery. Wayne galloped on his horse. His strong learning ability and his agile body without any extra fat allowed him to learn the best riding skills in a short period of time. He became a master of riding skills almost without any instruction. The sparring partners were old men and women who stayed up late at night. Seeing that they were all energetic and emotionally stable, I thought they had no complaints. Wayne's rapid progress is certainly due to Yulia's own characteristics. Rivers, lakes, cliffs, and steep cliffs are all flat. The undead warhorse ensures that the owner will not fall off the horse, which also proves Wayne's talent. Talent in death. The followers of the goddess of death came to the door, and one of the three agents of the goddess, the observer Griu, personally came out to recruit him. There is a reason. If the previous Death Knight died, Wayne has a great chance to become the new Death Knight. Without further ado, Wayne mastered riding skills in the cemetery and explored the use of shadow nightmares. With Yulia's guidance, he just copied the previous work. The death in Wayne's body is not single. There are two kinds of eternity. One comes from the shadow nightmare, focusing on curses, controlling thoughts, and making the enemy's thoughts fall into an eternal nightmare. The other comes from the town of Cafano, focusing on tranquility. This tranquility is like pausing time, and the enemy's thoughts stay at the moment of being hit by the sword. Compared with these two powerful death attributes that directly attack the mind, the other attributes such as awakening the dead, corrupting the body, and immortality are more like additional effects. In the end, the key is thinking. If you severely damage the enemy's thinking, you will win, and there are many ways to die according to your own thinking. It's a pity that my magic power is not strong enough, and my thinking is not enough. Even if I get the bonus, I can't fully exert the power of the two kinds of death, Wayne said regretfully. With the encouragement of licking dogs and licking horses, he quickly cheered up. No more talking, it's time to roll up. Only by rolling up can a new world be opened. Rightward arrow. Outside the cemetery at this time, more than a dozen figures are hidden in the mist. With the cover of the mist, they perfectly integrated into nature, with a restrained breath and no leaks. Unless you observe them face to face with your naked eyes, you can't sense their existence at all. The leading priestess is Simon Emily. She took off her priest robes, put on a light and capable outfit, and led the scalpel elites of London to investigate the cemetery. Simon had already surrendered to SPHY. To show his loyalty, he cut off his long hair and changed it to the same short hairstyle as SPHY. Just cutting hair was not enough to gain SPHY's trust. She gave Simon a task. The cemetery here was haunted in the middle of the night. There were traces of coffins being moved, and the soil had been turned over. It was suspected that the Death Knight was walking a horse nearby. Simon was asked to confirm the reliability of the information. So, Simon, who rarely left the office, came to the front line and carefully selected the 10 best scalpels she thought. The London division was established later than the Paris division, and the strength of the inherited scalpel organization was also much weaker. In addition, the Dark Knight had been rampant some time ago, and London's scalpel organization suffered a heavy blow. Simon had few choices and could only pick a general from the short ones. It was impossible to fight the Death Knight alone, unless he was dreaming. In the dream, it was possible to triumph with the Death Knight's head. The reality was that the Death Knight chopped off everyone's heads and lined them up on the fence. SPHY knew, and Simon knew too, that tonight's action was nothing more than a pledge of allegiance. It was not enough to just talk, but to show sincerity. If she encounters the warhorse of the Death Knight, Simon can retreat at any time without punishment. Not only is there no punishment, but there is also a reward. She brought back crucial intelligence. Simon looked at the cemetery with gusts of wind not far away, and silently made a gesture. The 10 members of the scalpel dispersed the queue, concealed their bodies and engaged in exploration and vigilance respectively. Low risk does not mean no risk. Simon always keeps this in mind. Only timid magicians can live long. A scalpel elite put his hands on the ground, connected his mind to the vegetation, magnified his vision through the roots of the vegetation, and explored the situation of the cemetery in all directions without dead ends. In the perception, The cemetery is surrounded by greenery, but the center of the cemetery is dark, and the vision is blocked, and it is impossible to break through this layer of black curtain. It is understandable that there is more or less the breath of death wandering in the cemetery. Life rejects this breath, subconsciously avoids it, and it is reasonable not to see it clearly. At Simon's signal, the scalpel elite took out a glass bottle, poured the pollen into his palm and blew it gently. Pollen that cannot be observed by the naked eye drifted, guiding the elite's vision to successfully enter the cemetery. Throughout the whole process, no one used magic, and they were all well-deserved experts in infiltration. Roar, roar, roar. The strange wind whistled and rolled over the ground, rippling the green grass and vegetation, and the shadows of the trees shook violently, reminding the group that the crisis was approaching. The scalpel elite whispered, "There is an undead dog," which is basically consistent with the evil dog next to the Death Knight in the intelligence. 3 months ago, the urban legend of this evil dog appeared in the city of London, and the first time was in the pet shelter, but this information needs to be verified. The elite told the intelligence expressionlessly, waiting for Simon's next command. "Can you see more?" Simon suppressed his surprise in his heart, wanting to confirm the whereabouts of the undead warhorse, but afraid that his men really saw the Death Knight. "It's only the undead evil dog. It seems to have sensed my sight and is searching around. Now is the best time to retreat," the elite said. Retreat. Simon did not hesitate at all. Tonight's mission was completed. It was confirmed that the undead hounds were real, and it was also an important piece of information. There were many magical creatures wandering in the thick fog of London. Whenever night fell, the fog would provide shelter for these magical creatures. Several churches joined forces to eliminate batches of magical life, and also set up barriers to ensure the safety of citizens at night, but there are always some magical life that sneak into the city of London through the cracks, and the undead dog may be one of them. It occupies the cemetery and regards it as its territory. As for why the undead dog is involved with the Death Knight, it may be because bones always attract each other. Simon sensed the crisis and was unwilling to stay for long. He retreated directly with the scalpel elite. She walked in the middle and was responsible for being protected. Roar, roar, roar. Accompanied by a low roar, the ubiquitous fog rolled violently, gathering from afar to the surrounding of the cemetery, turning into wandering venomous snakes, twisting and searching for something. The group stopped and tried their best to hide their breath, but the fog was not just for sensing and exploration, but also for a certain degree of observation at the physical level. Several meticulous elites immediately realized that they had been exposed and what the undead dog's roar was for. Retreat immediately. 2 elites set up Simon, who had a moving sense of combat, and the rest of the elites joined forces to prop up the protective barrier, pushing away the fog and speeding up the evacuation. With rich combat experience and decisive execution, if there is no accident, they will definitely be able to evacuate safely tonight. Swish. The mist snakes entangled into sharp claws, biting the protective barrier like canine teeth, and each impact left visible scratches on the barrier. In just 10 seconds, hundreds of scratches appeared. The magic power of the elites declined rapidly, and the horror of the undead hounds was powerful, especially the ability to control the fog, which was simply unbelievable. In terms of strength, the undead hounds are not only magical lives born in the fog, but also blessed by the Death Knight. Kaka. One after another, the bloody mouths bit and bit the barrier, the force became stronger and stronger, and the offensive became more and more fierce. The elites realized that someone had to stay behind to cover the rear. They ignored the pale Simon, and 5 people covered the rear, and 5 people broke through with all their strength. Of course, they still brought along Simon, the nominal leader. Boom. The moment the barrier was broken, the tangled vines burst out of the soil and grew into a giant more than 10 meters high, holding up the mist to block the bites of fierce dogs from all directions. The afterimages rushed across the ground and rushed towards the edge of the thick fog. The elites analyzed that the mist controlled by the undead dogs existed in a certain range. If they successfully broke through, they could leave the place dominated by the undead dogs, and then they could better counterattack. The elites who stayed behind were not in a hurry. They had experienced more dangerous scenes. At that time, the reason why the High Priest escaped the pursuit of the Dark Knight was because of the scalpel mechanism. Suddenly, the fog dissipated suddenly, and the hazy moonlight poured down. The pressure was greatly reduced, and the terrifying atmosphere stopped abruptly. The 5 elites who were left behind looked at the evil dogs in front in surprise, not understanding why the other party stopped attacking. What surprised them even more was that their colleagues who had finally escaped, with a faster retreat speed than before, carried Simon Priest back. "Do you have to be so excessive? We have tried our best to create a chance for you to break out. Can't you cherish it?" Facing the angry eyes of their colleagues, the 5 people who turned back were also extremely helpless. They went in the wrong direction. There was a more ruthless person over there. They couldn't break out. Under the moonlight, the sound of horse hooves was crisp. The Death Knight rode his warhorse sideways, with a skull surrounded by black mist, and a pair of jumping white flames looked at them. A heavy voice sounded. "Don't leave, stay and have a meal." Restarting the myth. Author, Feng Chao Huang. Chapter 70. Nights under the moon, the night is silent. It was so quiet that the group could hear each other's accelerating heartbeats. Their hearts were tightly grasped by a cold bone claw, and every beat brought a sharp pain, and every sharp pain accelerated their heartbeats. Looking at the Death Knight who suddenly appeared, Simon Priest felt an indescribable fear rising from the bottom of her heart. Her thoughts were out of control and chaotic, and her reason was swallowed up bit by bit. Simon's eyes flashed, and she looked around. The sky was gloomy and the rain and fog were hazy. She and her team members seemed to be in the kingdom of death, with all kinds of tombstones as far as the eye could see. The will-o'-the-wisp flickered, and the cold fog twisted into ghosts with fangs and claws, slowly walking towards them. Simon felt that her body was bound by something, unable to move, unable to make a sound, and wanted to mobilize magic power, but her body was empty. She suddenly realized that she was no longer in the God's chosen continent, and was exiled to the kingdom of death by the shadow nightmare. The kingdom of the goddess of death. According to the records of the church, once the victim is killed by the sword of the Death Knight, the soul of the victim cannot be preserved and arrives in the kingdom of death to be frozen forever. Her current situation is exactly the same as in the records. Am I dead? When did the Death Knight draw his sword? The fear of death intensified, like a huge wave rushing towards Simon. Her heartbeat accelerated wildly, but the hot blood flowing in her body became colder and colder, until the blood froze and her heart froze together. The ghost passed through the bodies of the team members, taking away the numb souls one by one. In front of her, a ghost claw slowly attacked and quietly stuck to her forehead. She knew she couldn't escape, and her souls and those of her team members would be imprisoned in the kingdom of death forever. The suffocating darkness came, and Simon's fear reached its peak at this moment. Her reason completely collapsed, and she screamed and fainted directly. Wayne looked at the female magician who fell to the ground speechlessly. What happened? She fainted because of an illusion. She was so afraid of ghosts. Why did she come to the cemetery at night? A person's reputation is like a tree's shadow, and the Death Knight is notorious. Simon, a leader who has been sitting in an office for many years, thought he had hit the real thing, and fainted directly due to excessive shock, without realizing that this was just a simple mental illusion. She should not be on the front line because of her poor combat experience. In contrast, the elites of the Scalpel organization performed well, and escaped immediately after a brief hallucination, and no one's thinking was affected. But the opponent was the Death Knight. Even if they had received professional training and could remain rational in the face of any enemy, they could not avoid the dark cloud of fear hanging over them. He 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 he. Wayne smiled heartily and swept his eyes over everyone. Don't be nervous, it affects the taste, I don't like souls that wet their pants. The skeleton's voice was icy cold, like an ice knife piercing the heart. The elites were under great pressure and took the initiative to attack without hesitation. They knew very well that once the Death Knight took action, they would probably not even have room to fight back. The cross star crossed, and the protective barrier rose from the ground. The goal was not to defend, but to block. In the blink of an eye, a seal was built to trap the Death Knight and the undead horse. Aubin roared angrily, and Wayne waved his hand to signal him to calm down. He looked at the green barrier that stood like a solid wall curiously, and drove his horse forward to touch it. Wayne was testing the level of the Death Knight vest. Although Yulia boasted that his master was omnipotent, hearsay is not as good as seeing. Everyone can brag. Whether it is an undead horse or an undead mule, you will know it after taking it out for a walk. A few free sparring partners took the initiative to come to the door. They looked very powerful. They were the ones. Wayne waved his hand and sprinkled a grey mist. Death collided with life and nature. The two opposite energies collided violently. After a short stalemate, death was obviously better. The powerful vitality of nature was withered, and a huge gap was corroded in the green barrier. Seeing this, the elites immediately launched a strong counterattack, and the advanced magic of the Church of Nature, such as natural fluctuations, contracted life, protective barriers, and rituals of all things, were performed one by one. The powerful magic fluctuations madly rewrote reality, casting a green magic forest in the empty wasteland. 10 thoughts shuttled through it, reshaped the forest form, summoned the spirit of nature to erase the concept of death in one fell swoop. Wayne was surrounded by grey fog, and the greenness dissipated as soon as it touched him, in turn erasing the concept of the spirit of nature. The quality is very different, and no matter how many there are, it is a dead end. The undead knight rode his warhorse and easily walked out of the magic forest, pulling out the bone sword and slashing it through the air. The sword light cut off the 10 thoughts connecting the magic forest, interrupted their spell casting, and instantly severely injured the 10 scalpel elites, leaving them pale and unable to fight again with just one blow. Wayne was very disappointed that he failed to test the upper limit of the vest, but he still had to pretend to be cool. He looked at the 10 surgical knife experiences and said, "Who is the captain? Stand up. X10. He, looking at your previous performance, I thought you were all brave warriors who were not afraid of sacrifice, but you were still afraid when you were about to die. The believers of the goddess of nature are no more than this." Wayne sneered, "I'll give you another chance. Whoever is the captain, as long as he stands up, I will let the others live." Still silent. The nominal captain lay unconscious on the ground, and the elites were struggling whether to wake him up. Too boring. Your cowardice and fear make me lose interest in swinging the sword. Get out of here. Your souls are worthless and you don't deserve to die under the sword. Wayne sheathed his sword, turned around and left on his undead warhorse. With a whistle, Aubin leaped over the heads of the elites, wagging his tail to catch up with his master, and disappeared into the thick fog with him. The elites were both grateful and humiliated to have saved their lives. They focused their dissatisfied eyes on Simon. This priest was too weak, had zero combat experience, poor command and responsibility, and the most outrageous thing was his courage. He was actually scared to death by the enemy. The church was humiliated today and was severely ridiculed by the Death Knight. She should take full responsibility. Help priest Simon up and report truthfully to the high priest. Wayne walked his dog in the cemetery in the first half of the night and walked his horse in the sewer in the second half of the night. During this period, he also took the time to create an element collapse incident. His night life was rich and colorful and he lived a very fulfilling life. Except that the essence of life is still suspended at 95%, the increase can be ignored, and there is nothing wrong with other things. He is very happy. According to the law of conservation of happiness, the total amount of happiness in the world does not change. Happiness will not disappear, it will only transfer from one person to another. If you feel pain, someone must have built happiness on your pain. For example, the High Priestess is very painful now. Some time ago, she overthrew Sydney through the geocentric religion, suppressed the local snake, and regained the power of the High Priest. 2 days ago, she put pressure on the remaining 3 priests with a little trick and got Simon's surrender. Sci-fi came from the fighting faction and firmly believed that strong strength can control strong power. Strength comes first and power comes later. Simon sitting in the office does not conform to her values. But now is the time to hire people. Sci-fi has no choice, and she also needs a leading example, so she decided to give Simon a chance. As long as he does not make mistakes, the latter can continue to serve as a priest. Everything was planned, but the Death Knight came for real. Simon lost face in the enemy camp, which completely proved his incompetence and no longer suitable for the position of priest. Sci-fi raised her hand to support her forehead and said to the timid Simon, "Submit a list and recommend 3 candidates you think are suitable. From now on, you, just sit in the office. I remember that your management ability is remarkable." Simon smiled bitterly and thanked him, turned and walked out of the house. She was unlucky. She would be kicked by the heel if she jumped off the building. The High Priest gave her a chance, but she didn't seize it and was seized by the Death Knight. Simon didn't expect to come back alive. By the way, according to the report provided by the Scalpel, I suggest you find a psychologist for counseling and submit the physical examination report as soon as possible, Sci-fi said in a business-like manner. Simon's back trembled as he left, and he was relieved when Sci-fi's voice fell. As long as he didn't go directly to the Red Leaf Forest Lunatic Asylum to recuperate, everything would be fine. She thanked him and quickened her pace to leave. Sci-fi looked at the helpless priest, feeling helpless. She had hoped to set an example for the onlookers, but now, she had made a big joke. Those who didn't know would think she did it on purpose. Sci-fi could fully predict that in the eyes of others, she had been defined as a dictator, and the result would be the same whether she surrendered or resisted. If you can't recruit people, you can't cultivate confidence, and without confidence, power will not be stable. The Dark Knight was rampant, and the Windsor division of the Natural Church suffered heavy losses. The existing elites were important but not many. From a political perspective, they were all lucky people who picked up the fruits of victory, and their strength was not enough to correspond to their positions. It was unrealistic to restore the vitality of the Windsor division in a short period of time. It was still possible to make the London headquarters stronger first. Sci-fi first thought of Paris. If you want confidence, you have confidence. If you want talents, you have talents. If you can't cultivate them internally for the time being, you can draw a batch of fresh blood from outside. Sci-fi picked up the phone with a headache, and put it back after a moment. Windsor and Frank have a century-old friendship, and injecting this batch of fresh blood is not a good suggestion. Take her as an example. If she were not a native of London, the headquarters would not appoint her as the High Priest. The mess was so big that Sci-fi was numb. After thinking about it, she still called the headquarters. The Death Knight appeared in London and defeated a district priest who led the Scalpel elites. In addition, the Dark Knight who was hiding in the dark and came out from time to time, the headquarters of London was in danger. In order to ensure the interests of the Church in the Kingdom of Windsor, the headquarters must dispatch a group of elites to settle in. The headquarters was skeptical. The Death Knight could not exist in London and Paris at the same time. One of them must be fake, which was very involved. It was decided to send a group of elites to London to assist Sci-fi in investigating. In everyone's cognition, the Death Knight would not leave the underground tomb. The Death Knight of London was very likely a fake. The alliance of death and darkness was deliberately mysterious, and they must be planning something famous. Be brave, this is a conspiracy, the evil alliance has evil intentions, and when the Church of Nature focuses all its attention on London, they will invade Paris on a large scale and include the entire Frankish kingdom in their territory. On the other side, upon learning that Simon was punished, the two priests Lawrence and Dana laughed out loud. What did I say? That woman will not let us go. Lawrence laughed at his former colleague fiercely. Naivete led to destruction, fools do not deserve sympathy, everything is their own fault. She thought she won, but she was kicked out in less than 10 days. Dana also laughed. The two continued to visit Sydney and asked him to deal with Sci-fi. After 3 consecutive afternoon teas, they had no results. They had guessed Sydney's plan. There was the Dark Knight in front and the Death Knight behind. The High Priest who landed was attacked by the 2 knights from front and back. If he was lucky, he would lose power and step down. If he was unlucky, he would be killed by the knights directly. Sydney didn't have to do anything, just wait. However, Sydney could wait, but the two of them couldn't. When the 10-day deadline was up, they had to pack up and leave. In order to protect their power, the two decided to fight and find the Dark Knight to guide him to face Sci-fi. The Death Knight would also be fine. They were not picky. So, where should we find the Knight? Find the believers of death and darkness. They have been very active recently and must know something. Okay, I'll go find death and you go find darkness. Okay, as long as one succeeds, we can drive that woman out of London. In fact, there is another possibility, kidnapping the woman's husband. I remember she has a daughter. Lawrence suggested. Forget it. The relationship between the Landau family and the Free Mage Alliance is unclear. The magicians who serve them are much more difficult than the believers of death and darkness. Dana frowned. Not only the Free Mage Alliance, the Landau family is also one of the 14 tulip families. Further digging will lead to the royal family, which is a slide that cannot be touched. Many people think that the Windsor regime is controlled by the cabinet and the Queen is just a mascot. In fact, the Queen still holds the real power to govern the country. Having no real power and having power but not using it are two different things. The fact that the natural church can set up its headquarters in London is inseparable from the acquiescence of the royal family. That was a long time ago. The Heavenly Father Church was powerful and covered all the beliefs of the chosen continent. Under the strong oppression of theocracy, the imperial power was weakened, and the royal families of various countries expressed dissatisfaction. The Windsor royal family did a very extraordinary thing, supporting the power of the Heavenly Father Church in Windsor, using the state religion as a temptation to let it set up its own business and get rid of the control of the church headquarters. Under the game of many parties, the operation of the Windsor royal family was not completed, but the influence of the Heavenly Father Church was severely weakened in the country, and then other gods' beliefs rose up. The God-chosen continent has entered an era where many gods' beliefs coexist. The Windsor royal family has survived the storms and is not as simple as it seems. The Queen can be regarded as a mascot, but she cannot be regarded as a mascot only. The hidden meaning of many years, I am afraid only the gods know what kind of power the royal family controls.